Hello, welcome to Wonder Years Wednesday. I'm Wendy Sellers, but the kids nicknamed me the Puberty Lady. And that's because I love to talk about puberty to anyone who will listen, basically. And during these pandemic times, many schools did not teach their puberty lessons at school because of all of the change and pressure they were under. And they turned it back over to parents and other trusted adults to teach kids about puberty at home. And I talk to a lot of parents and other adults who say, yes, we really want to teach our kids about puberty, but we don't know how to start. We don't have the tools we need. And so I decided to launch a series of book reviews to help equip parents and other trusted adults to talk to their kids about puberty and teach that at home. And so this week's book review is a book for adults. And so hopefully you'll find this especially helpful. We're going to talk about a book called Talk to Me First, Everything You Need to Know to Become Your Kid's Go-To Person About Sex. And it's written by Deborah Roffman. And Deborah is a sex educator who has taught kids in schools across all the grades. And she has over 35 years of experience in doing that. So she has a wealth of information and true stories to tell in this book. The softcover book was published in 2012 and it has 293 pages full of great information for parents and other adults who are trusted. She calls them adult nurturers of kids ages 0 to 18. And I certainly wish that I had read this book before I began parenting. And now that I'm a grandparent, it's very helpful now also. So the book talks about the 5 needs that kids have at every developmental stage they go through and how those 5 needs define the 5 roles that nurturers need to take in kids' lives until they're ready to be independent and adult. And so it's organized into 9 chapters, so let's go ahead and take a peek at those chapters. Chapter 1 is called Getting There First. And in this chapter, she introduces all the reasons that parents need to be the ones their kids talk to first, and all of the reasons that many parents are hesitant to talk to their kids. And she focuses on Puritan speak, all those concerns and objections that she's heard across the years. It describes how this book will teach adults to talk to kids from ages 0 to 18, and it also promises to give us some practice in this book. Chapter 2 is called Raising Children in a World Gone Upside Down. And this chapter talks about how society has changed for our kids. And it includes a very interesting discussion about how commercialism created a developmental stage called tweens, and that is really not a developmental stage at all. And so she gives us a list of things for parents to consider to counteract society and this newly created fake developmental stage called tweens, and how it's really a commercialized bid to access kids' money that they have to spend and make them customers for life. Chapter 3 is called Parenting is a Five-Piece Suit. And here we first learn about the 5 needs that all kids have across their life, 0 to age 18. As they go through different developmental stages, those 5 needs are expressed in different ways, but they're always there. And it tells us about the 5 roles that nurturers have to take on in order to meet those needs in the kids that we're nurturing. So whether we're a parent, a teacher, or another adult who cares for kids, we can put on this 5-piece suit and take on those 5 roles to meet our young people's needs. Chapter 4 is called Affirmation, and this is the first need that all children have through their life and every developmental stage. It explains how sexuality is an integrated part of every human being, and that kids actually have been going to gender and sex school since they were born, and actually before they were born. So it's not a new thing to provide sex education for kids. It describes the developmental stages that all kids go through and what kids are interested in learning at each of those stages, and how nurturers can support their positive sexual development so that they'll develop into sexually healthy adults. Chapter 5 is called Information, Folding in the Facts. So information is the second of the 5 developmental needs that kids have. And here we learn the difference between informing a child and educating a child. And informing a child is merely giving them facts, whereas educating a child is teaching them how to think critically about information and make good decisions. It shares ways to share information in ways that are relevant, and it gives wording suggestions for a variety of topics. Chapter 6 is titled Clarity About Values, Honing Your Messages. And so this is the third need, values. It discusses the differences between personal values and ethical values that are held by a society. It also discusses the difference between a rule-based versus an ethics-based value system. It's very helpful in understanding how parents can teach their values, family values, spiritual values, and help their child form personal values, and how the school and other organizations can teach those ethical values that are held by a society, and how both of those are very much needed. It helps the reader to sort through their own values and what they want their child to learn. And it discusses several sensitive sexuality topics and gives examples to use with children of various ages. Chapter 7 is the delicate art of limit setting. So the fourth need children have is limit setting. This chapter begins by reminding us how literal kids are, and how that can lead to a lot of misinformation on their parts and how much they need those limits, even if they don't act like they need them. It also talks about the marketers are constantly displaying sexualized behaviors as desirable and normal for even young children. And so parents need to put on their 5-piece suit and set boundaries for kids to keep them safe and healthy. The way limits are set will vary according to the developmental level of the child, and it's important to balance setting rules with allowing choices, and that changes over a child's developmental life. And it includes several key topics that require some limit setting by parents, so it gives the reader a good opportunity to think through what those boundaries will be. Chapter 8 is called Anticipatory Guidance, Turning Children Over to Themselves. And this is the fifth of the needs that children have and the fifth of the roles that nurturers need to take on. Children will not learn to make good decisions if we only teach them to say no. And that's a lot of what sex ed is currently focused on, is just saying no. Well, what about the time when it's time to say yes? When they're adults and they're choosing relationships and they want to say yes. So it explains how to provide guidance for when kids are making their own decisions and how to say yes when it's the right time. It emphasizes asking kids thought-provoking questions to encourage their critical thinking rather than always telling them what to do or what to think. Chapter 9 is Practice Makes Proficient. Let's go fishing. And so she uses the old story or the adage about you can give a man a fish and he'll not be hungry for that day, but if you teach someone to fish, then they'll always have something to eat. So the final chapter provides a lot of typical situations for you to practice applying all the 5 principles that the book has spelled out. And the situations are for multiple ages of kids and multiple topics. So it's very useful practice time. And then at the very back of the book, there's a section of notes and things that all adults need to know, a little bit of background information for them, family resource list, and an appendix of basic facts for parents, and then an index so that if you're interested in a specific topic, you can look it up in the index. So ways this book is and isn't inclusive. The book refers to adult nurturers, and I like that because it includes parents, caregivers, educators, and others who work with kids of all ages. The book discusses gender identity and sexual orientation in supportive ways, and it stresses the importance of providing support and acceptance for kids who, have represent the breadth of sexual orientation and gender identity that young people can have. The book uses he or she pronouns, not some of the newer, more inclusive pronouns. It includes ideas about masturbation, pornography, intercourse, and sexting. So it includes very relevant topics and some of the topics that parents are most anxious about talking with their kid about and not knowing exactly how to do that. So, in summary, from this title, a person might think that the parent or other nurturer might want to read it once their child is older because it has the word about sex in the title. But this book is definitely one to read when your child is much younger. Either before birth or definitely by age 4 is the best time. And if you haven't read it by that time, it's never too late to pick it up and apply it. And then reread it every year, I would suggest, because as your child develops, you will want to apply your 5 roles to that new developmental stage, and this book really helps you to do that. And we can all use the practice, right? And so that last chapter with practice situations can help you develop your own skill set. So thank you for joining Wonder Years Wednesday today, and I look forward to seeing you next week when I'll review yet another book about puberty. And until then, I hope you stay very well and safe and healthy and happy. I'll see you next week at Wonder Years Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye-bye.